Joining us now on the program is one of over 340 charities and nonprofits supported on the Share Detroit platform. Danielle Todd is the executive director of Make Food, Not Waste, and joins us now on the program. Danielle, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on the program today to talk about your organization. Tell us about Make Food, Not Waste, what your history and the mission of your organization is.
Sure thing. We are actually a environmental organization, and we exist to make sure that food stays out of landfills. We were founded in 2017. It's a group that I started way back, 6 years ago, and I now serve as the executive director. We have a number of programs that we do. We try to work on things that some solutions that other groups aren't necessarily focused on. So we try to fill some gaps, and we do that with a couple kitchens that we operate. We work with restaurants to help reduce food waste, and really just help home cooks too figure out how they can make their food go further at home.
We know that food waste doesn't necessarily only affect our restaurants or necessarily us in the home. It also goes back to farming and agriculture in our state as well. There's so many different areas of our society that we can address food waste. And when it comes to environmental issues, so often we focus on recycling as the best method of not putting different products into our landfills. In fact, we just ran a story today from the Detroit News about Michigan's improvement in recycling in recent years. But another method that can be used to preserve some of this, what would instead be waste that's put into our landfills, is upcycling. So tell us about upcycling and how that applies particularly to avoiding increased use of food waste.
Absolutely. Like you said, recycling, and in food, it would be considered composting or other ways that you're making sure that you're reusing those materials. But one of the things that we believe is that food should stay food. And so we work hard in our kitchens to, as you said, upcycle. So we're taking in food that is maybe surplus or overripe, or it's food that's still edible, but someone has to do something to it. Another area that upcycling comes into play is taking byproducts from other food manufacturers. So let's say you are a brewer and you make beer, you're left with a lot of that grain afterwards, and that grain is actually usable as food. And so that's something that we can take in, dry it, and mill it, and turn it into something that humans can really enjoy. So upcycling is a lot about taking food items that you might not necessarily think of as food, but we know that it still has a lot of nutrition. It's still edible, and if you just put a little bit of work into it, you can turn it into something that's quite delicious.
And so let's dive a little bit deeper into that. Elaborate for us, if you will, Danielle, on how that effort is made to take this food that is still edible, but maybe not going to be used in a restaurant or in another capacity, and how you ultimately do make that to be upcycled and usable in another capacity.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite examples is there's a company in Eastern Market that makes pierogies. And so as they're making the pierogies, they have little scraps of dough that are left over that just don't fit into to the pierogi. And so we go every other week and we collect. They give us the bags of their leftover pierogi dough. Our chefs are able to turn that into everything from dumplings to noodles. A couple weeks ago, our chefs made galettes, which were amazing and super delicious. Basically, an open faced savory pie that was all from that pierogi dough scrap. So here's something that the pierogi company doesn't necessarily have a use for, but it still can be transformed into something else. So we have a lot of fun with that kind of stuff, working with people who are producing food and trying to figure out how we can take their kind of scraps and leftovers and turn it into something really unique.
It's really interesting what, excuse me, Make Food Not Waste and other organizations like it are doing to prevent food waste, or at least to stretch out the food that we often are going to end up putting into landfills, and make sure it's getting as much use as it possibly can and safely can. More information can be found on their efforts at makefoodnotwaste.org, or by visiting Share Detroit's website on sharedetroit.org for all of the more information. This includes their efforts at their Upcycling kitchen. Danielle, over 76,000 pounds of food has been upcycled in this kitchen to date. Tell us about the Upcycling kitchen and what goes on there.
Oh, it's amazing. We actually have two locations right now. We have a team of 5 professional chefs that are employed to they take a look at everything that comes in every week. It's always random. It's always inconsistent, and it's essentially like chopped every week, where they take a look at everything that came in, and they sort of stand together and think, well, what could we do with this and what could we do with that, and they come up with a delicious meal that uses up all of those ingredients. So they make about 4,000 meals a week. That food is distributed in a number of different ways. Sometimes it's packed individually for people to pick up directly, and other times we will make communal meals that go out in large pans, and those might go out to different churches or after school programs or senior centers, places where people are able to eat communally together. So we just try to make sure that the food is getting out to people who can really benefit from it and enjoy it. I think one of the things that really stands out in all of this is, first, of course, the amazing creativity of the chefs that are able to come up with different menu items every week based on these extremely random ingredients that come in, but also how delicious it is. These are meals that we would be proud to serve our friends and family. These are they're delicious, they're nutritious and wholesome, and really we feel a true benefit to the community.
So it's not just an effort that ends up going to preventing more waste going into our landfills and less full use of these food products that we're creating. It's also helping to address other similar and or adjacent issues like food insecurity in Detroit
Mm-hmm.
and neighboring areas. So just how big of an impact does upcycling efforts like this, like what happens in the Upcycling kitchen and other areas throughout your network and other groups that are doing things similar, how big of an impact can that have in a local area, especially someplace like the city of Detroit, that's such a large area, on
Mm-hmm.
mitigating food insecurity issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. Of course, we know that Detroit has high food insecurity rates. We believe that a missing piece in it is really providing that processing capability. So we have wonderful food rescue organizations in Metro Detroit. Of course, our food banks and our food pantry system are very strong. But we feel that a complement to that is would be kitchens, and our kitchens that take in surplus food and these other food items that just need a little bit of love before they go back out. So we know that this is it's really a complement to other charitable food work that goes on in the city, and we believe that this is something that should exist in all cities, really, because all cities are going to have the same food streams. So things like sometimes you just have overripe bananas that show up, and we've all had those experiences where we look at overripe bananas and we think, oh gosh, someone should really make banana bread out of that. Well, that's what we do. You need to have a place for all of that type of food to go. And so as we know that our food system is going to become more strained over the next few years, as weather keeps getting more extreme, we know that we're going to have to make the most of our food, and having these processing kitchens are currently very important and are going to continue to be even more important.
We're joined on today's program by Danielle Todd, the Executive Director of Make Food Not Waste, one of over 300 charities and nonprofits supported on the Share Detroit platform. You can find more information either on sharedetroit.org by searching Make Food Not Waste in their Find a Nonprofit section, or going straight to their website at makefoodnotwaste.org. Makefoodnotwaste.org. Directly the place to go for more information on this nonprofit in our local area. And Danielle, there's also another effort on top of the Upcycling Kitchen that partners with restaurants in particular that you call the Pledge. Tell us about the Pledge.
We're really excited about the pledge. It's an international food waste certification program. We learned about it a few years ago and wanted to bring it to the US. So the restaurants that we're working with in Metro Detroit are the first ones in the US to be going through this. It's a really comprehensive program that takes a look at operations of the restaurant and really works to identify how we can prevent food from going to waste in the first place. So a lot of times when people think about how restaurants can reduce food waste, they think about donating food or composting, which are very important. But we know that the best thing that you can do is prevent food waste from happening even before you get to that point where it needs to be donated or composted. So we have 27 restaurants signed up that we're working with right now. And as they go through the process, they are audited by an international auditor who will award them a certificate, and they know that they can join other international restaurants and hotels and food service groups that have gone through this process and have the confidence that they know that they really went through a certification program that's very serious. So we're excited for them. We have a few that are coming up on their audits, including Oakland University and Alchemy and Johnny's in Royal Oak, Sylvan Table in Sylvan Lake. So encourage your listeners and your viewers to go check out those restaurants and support them in their efforts and thank them for taking such a big step towards reducing food waste.
Yeah, it's not easy of an undertaking, to get that certification, but just in general to prevent food waste in these restaurants, because so often that food waste is happening at the tables themselves from the customers, and with food regulations and health code regulations, that has to go to landfills. But in other cases, they can find that extra food that they don't need or they're not going to use or they can't use any further that's still safe, and help organizations like yours help so many people in our local area. But Danielle, for those that are at home, that are thinking about this issue now that are listening to this, or they're learning more information from your website at makefoodnotwaste.org, and they want to take some steps themselves, what can they do at home to prevent food waste or to use their food waste more productively to help their community?
Great question. Two of the most common reasons why people throw food away at home is the first is they don't really enjoy their leftovers. So if you have leftovers in your refrigerator, work to make sure you eat those up. The second biggest reason why people throw food away at home is there's a misunderstanding around the dates that are on the food that comes in. So quick and easy way to understand dates is that it's not necessarily an expiration date. We recommend that you use your senses to determine if the food is still okay to eat. So look at it, smell it, taste it. If it looks okay, smells okay, and tastes okay, it's likely okay. So you can be pretty confident in that. But I would say what we like to tell people as a kind of shorthand of how you can really cut down on food waste at home is to buy less, use what you buy, and compost the rest. There are great compost services out there if you don't want to do it in your backyard. There's a local group in Metro Detroit called Midtown Composting that will come directly to your home, pick up your compost every week. That's your fruits and vegetable scraps, your meat bones, everything. They even take pizza boxes. Very inexpensive, and it's a great program to help keep whatever scraps you have out of the landfill.
You can get involved too by participating with Make Food Not Waste on their website through your donations, through your time and volunteering efforts, and becoming a food waste champion as well. MakeFoodNotWaste.org is their website. We're joined by their executive director, Danielle Todd, on today's edition of the Megacast. We've got about 90 seconds left, so before we let you go, Danielle, what's one other thing that you wish that more people in our community knew about food waste?
People are really surprised to hear that food waste in landfills is one of the biggest reasons why we have climate change. So anything that you can do to make sure that you're not landfilling any food is going to have a direct impact. In the state of Michigan, we landfill billions, hundreds of billions of pounds of food every year, and that directly releases methane into the atmosphere. And so as a state, we can do a lot to make sure that we're not throwing all that food away.
Yeah, some of it's going to get there regardless of what efforts we take, but we can reduce how much of that gets there, or at least when and how much succession it does get into our atmosphere by taking some of these efforts. It's complicated. It's a lot to learn, but you can learn all of it through the resources at makefoodnotwaste.org. Danielle, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.